Winsome, Callum, welcome to Profile.
Thank you so much, Archie. It really is an honor and a pleasure to be here.
It is my honor to have you on the set with me today. And one of the most visible communication roles in the country, I would argue that it is the most visible communication role in the country at the Jamaica Public Service, where you are Director of Corporate Communications. Just coming out of Hurricane Melissa alone, you are normally everywhere. That's everywhere.
Under normal circumstances.
Under normal circumstances. So this is the abnormal circumstance. So in moments of national concern, your voice is often the one that is explaining what is happening. But there is more. A justice of the peace, a board member, an educator, a mentor, a Commonwealth scholar, a former public education officer, and he worked at the Jamaica Information Service, the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, and the National Housing Trust. And long before corporate communications, a teacher who even taught
at Campion
College, the CEO, who is now the CEO of the Jamaica Public Service. We'll get to the Campion College days. But tonight, you are not speaking so much for an institution, but it's about yourself. And so I actually want to start by asking you, how does this part of it feel? Because we don't meet this Winsome, Callum, at all, a lot.
I don't mind sharing my story because I think a lot of people can benefit from hearing where I started and where I am and where I think I'm going. I'm
always fascinated, I've just said this a million times, about how the way in which people are raised and how they grow up, sort of determines in some way or sort of shapes who they become over time. So I want to start by talking a little bit about, before press briefings and, corporate statements and all of that, Bamboo St. Anne and the childhood that sort of formed the discipline long before communications became a career. So raised in St. Anne, third of 6 children, a single mother, a dressmaker. Let's talk a little bit about first your mother, the woman who raised you.
Yes, my mother, single parent, 6 children. Her education didn't go beyond primary school, but she was a strong believer in education. And she encouraged us to go beyond any limitation. So she established upfront, do not be limited by your current circumstances. So she
would say that to you?
Absolutely. She's like, you're going places, whether you like it or not, you're going places. So she planted in us this expectation that we would not always be poor, because we were poor. In that community, which was generally not a high-income community, we were poor. She was a dressmaker, a really good dressmaker, but she was not a good businesswoman. So, the money wasn't always there. And let me tell you how poor we were. We couldn't do supermarket, like, people go supermarket once a week and so on. It would be a just in time. She would wait until a customer pays some money, and then we would go to the shop to buy something for dinner, for a meal. So for dinner, usually it was flour or rice, and very often there was no protein, but we were okay. We didn't really realize how poor we were. Breakfast would be like overnight food from the dinner, and lunch we would go to the bakery to get either a pack of biscuits or a bread. And I'll tell you about the bakery. We had 3 bakeries in Bamboo at the time I grew up, 3 bakeries. So there was always fresh bread, and this was the norm. Everybody would go and get fresh bread because, that was expected.
Beautiful smell.
But we couldn't afford fresh bread. Yeah. Because the money just wasn't there. So we would buy what was at the time called reduced bread. Mm-hmm. And that's the bread, because the price was discounted, that's the bread that would have been a day old. No, nowadays we buy bread a day old in the supermarket, but at that time in that community, reduced bread was looked down on because it's only the poor people would be able to would buy that. So I'd go into the bakery, and I'd be very embarrassed that I'd be buying reduced bread. And I'd wait till the bakery was empty to ask for it. That kind of embarrassment. But we got over it, because at the end of the day, we were fed. She tried as best as possible to make sure that we had 3 meals. it didn't matter what was in the meal, but she made an effort. She took a lot of interest in our education. Most of the time we went to school barefooted because we didn't have school shoes, but she was very present. I mean, this was a present parent. Even without education, even with her hearing disability, she was very involved in our education. So she would turn up at school September morning and introduce herself to all our teachers and tell them that she was going to hold them accountable.
She would tell him.
Yes.
She would tell him she was going to hold him accountable.
Yes, she say, you need to make sure this one behave, and this one is mine. So you just spare the eye, but ensure that you discipline them if they step out of line. It was really embarrassing for us, so we would, just be like, Mommy, just go away already. But she was very involved, and that helped because the teachers paid attention. So when I got to grade 6 and I needed to do common entrance, she couldn't afford the extra lessons. She couldn't pay for that. But Miss McNeish, Mrs. Watson, she was the teacher at the time in grade 6, and she said, no, ma'am, let Winsome come, because she knew my mother and she knew my mother's heart. So she allowed me to do the extra lessons free of cost because my mother was so passionate about us moving ahead, and Mrs. Watson was such a wonderful teacher. And I did pass the common entrance, and I remember that day when the results came out and our names were called and we had to go up and be recognized. I remember going up barefooted on the platform and feeling really proud because I had made my mother proud.
All right,
it was a proud moment for all of us.
I want to pick up on that, but we have to take our first break on Profile. After the break, we continue to talk about education redirection and the early signs of leadership that began to emerge. My guest is Winsome Callum, Director of Corporate Communications at the Jamaica Public Service Company, but she's not talking about the JPS at all. She's talking about herself today. Stay with us.